Hello everyone, this is Dear God Tinku Hoy, and today I want to talk about the greatest manga you have never read. And that manga is none other than Blade of the Immortal by Hiroaki Samura, who is one of my favorite mangakas of all time. Now, Blade of the Immortal is a manga that began serialization in 1993, so it's a 28-year-old manga, and I have to say, it's a manga that still holds up its brilliance till today. Now, the reason why I refer to Blade of the Immortal as the greatest manga you have never read is because it's my second favorite manga of all time, behind Berserk, and sometimes both of them switch positions depending on how I feel or depending on how fondly I remember them. So, the manga for Blade of the Immortal is set during the mid Tokugawa shogunate period in Japan. So, it's a samurai manga, and it's the best samurai manga I have ever read. And yes, I have read Lone Wolf and Cub, and yes, I have read Vagabond, and I've also watched Rurouni Kenshin, including the 4-episode OVA. So, Blade of the Immortal is still the best samurai manga for me. Now, the story of Blade of the Immortal follows a man named Manji who has been cursed with immortality after killing 100 men and decides to kill 1,000 evil men in order to lift the curse. So one day he is introduced to a little girl whose name is Rin Asano, whose parents have been killed by a group of samurai who call themselves the Itoryu. Now Rin wants to get revenge on this group of people, so she employs the services of Manji, who is an immortal samurai, to help her on her quest. And Manji, after making his declaration to kill 1,000 evil men, sees this as an opportunity to start getting to work on that number. So he accepts her request, and then they go off to get revenge on the members of the Itoryu. Now, this is how the story starts. There is no spoiler. This is basically like just the introduction to the whole story of Blade of the Immortal, so there are no spoilers here. Now, the first few chapters of this manga are like the introduction arc, which kind of set up the world and then introduce some characters along with their goals and their motivations. So that's what you'll be seeing in the first few chapters before it starts getting different arcs that tackle different things and different subjects and different plot lines. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the art of the manga. Now, the art of Blade of the Immortal is some of the best art you'll ever see in manga, period. Like, it starts off okay, it starts off good, but it gets better as time goes on. The way Hiroaki Samura does his manga panels and makes them easy to follow is also really good. He's really good at paneling, and he's also really good at drawing fights. And let me just go on and say this. If you're talking about the way fights are done in manga and the way the panels are done, Blade of the Immortal is the best action manga for me, period. It's the best. I know that's a lot of high praise on this manga so far, but what can I say? That's why it's my second favorite manga of all time, and sometimes it wrestles with Berserk. Hiroaki Samura, the mangaka, is also good at drawing human anatomy. He's also really good at that. He's also good at drawing the faces, because sometimes they have this realistic look to them, and I really love that about him. His art is just beautiful. So the art of Blade of the Immortal is beautiful. It gets better as time goes on. So that's just one point out of the way for Blade of the Immortal. Now, the next thing I want to talk about for Blade of the Immortal is the characters. Now, the cast of Blade of the Immortal is one of the best I've ever seen in manga. It's one of my favorite casts of all time. It's a really strong cast. Everybody has their own backstory, everybody has their own motivation, and you get to find out a lot about the characters from the way they act and the way they do things, the way they interact with each other. So the characters of Blade of the Immortal are really interesting to follow. And it's also interesting because as an action manga, a lot of them clash together. They clash against each other. So it's also nice to see how that works and how their fights go. But let me leave that for a second and talk about our two main characters, or our two protagonists, Manji and Rin Asano. Now, I said that earlier, Rin's parents were killed by the Itoryu, and she just wants to get revenge on them. She wants to get revenge on them because she believes that people that kill other people for no reason at all shouldn't go around living their lives as if nothing happened without facing any consequences. So she hopes that getting revenge on that group will bring her some sort of closure and will probably bring her parents peace, because she just doesn't imagine living life while those guys are out there doing their own thing, probably causing more harm to other people. So that's basically her motivation for the whole story. Sometimes she feels like not she just wants to get revenge, but she doesn't want to also deal with the consequences of getting revenge. So Manji and other characters that she meets, they kind of teach her that and tell her that the path that she's going on isn't as straightforward as she thinks it is. So it's basically the same revenge won't solve anything kind of story, yeah. But the way it's handled here is much different than other stories. For example, she ends up meeting a lot of characters from the Itoryu. So it's also interesting to see how she kind of reacts to meeting some of them. Now, Lynn is a naive character, and there's an innocence to her character which gives her room for character development and character growth. So that's really nice to see because she starts off as this annoying girl, but then you go to see her as something more than that. And this character development is aided by a lot of things, a lot of events in the manga, a lot of characters in the manga. But I feel that no character really aids to this character development of hers than Manji. As far as Zin's character development goes, I feel that Manji and probably Anotsuka Gehisa are the biggest contributors to her character development. But now, I want to talk about our man, our badass protagonist, Manji. Now, who is Manji, the Immortal Samurai? Now, the best way to kind of summarize his own character is this way. If you've read any manga or watched any anime or movie or read any book where the main character starts off a certain way and ends up a certain way due to his experiences or things like that, you will kind of understand what Manji represents in this manga. So if you've read Berserk and you've seen God's character development, if you've read Vagabond and seen Musashi Miyamoto's character development, if you've read Vinland Saga and seen Thorfinn's journey, if you've read Kokuno Hito, The Climber, and seen Mori Buntaro's journey, you kind of see where I'm coming from. So Manji is basically the main character of any shonen or seinen series that has reached the end of his character development. So by the time you start the series, you're starting the series seeing this guy as the hardened character he is. He has completed his journey. So that's the character you're seeing right there at the beginning of the story. So there isn't really much character development going on for his character. His character is kind of like a stagnant character. It's not supposed to really change much. It's supposed to help then change though. So that's what you see throughout the whole manga. He's kind of like this mentor figure. He's kind of like the elder brother to Rin. And it's also nice that he seems like an elder brother because he lost his younger sister when he was out there killing 100 men. Due to his actions, he kind of lost his younger sister. So Rin kind of like fills that hole for him. So it's kind of like seeing this so it's nice to see their relationship and how it goes on, their interactions and stuff like that. So the two of them and the way they interact with each other is some of the best things the manga has to offer. And he's the one that kind of helps her in a way reach her potential and get to that certain point in her life where she's like this character where you're like, oh yeah, this Zen girl has really grown. So Manji is kind of responsible for that, and that's the role he serves in this manga. Of course, he's also a badass, but he's also more than that because he helps and he aids Rin's character development. Another thing to mention about Manji is that even though he's immortal, he isn't unbeatable and he isn't invincible. As a matter of fact, as soon when he gains his immortality, he doesn't really spend that much time polishing his sword skills again. So he's more of this lazy guy because he knows that immortality can carry him throughout the fight. But still, a lot of characters really wreck him and they really beat him up. So it's not like he's winning every fight. As a matter of fact, I don't think I have seen a main character lose as many fights as Banji. But like I said, the series isn't just about him. He is badass, yes, but he's also fighting against the greatest swordsmen of that era, and some of them are just insane. And this is him, even with his immortality, he didn't bother polishing his skills, so it's not really going to be an easy journey for him. And when you see some of the characters he fights and some of the characters that he doesn't fight, you realize that Rin's journey of revenge was kind of futile to begin with, because if she didn't have the aid of Manji, or if some things didn't happen along her journey, she would have never gotten revenge on any of those members in that group, because those guys were really insane. Those were the best swordsmen of that era. Now, the Itoryu aren't just some untouchable group. There's also the Mugai Ryu, which is a group of criminals or people with criminal records that are under the control of the shogunate. So the shogunate gives them instructions and people, a list of people to kill, and if they do enough of that, they get to walk free and start a new life. So that's basically what a lot of the members of that group work towards and strive towards. So that's a lot of their own motivation. But they all have their own backstories and they all have their own motivations, and apart from just becoming free people and starting new lives. So it's good to see that this group are also made like a hard counter for the Itoryu. Now, I want to talk about the villains or the antagonists of this manga. Now, there are three top tier antagonists in this manga. There's Habaki, there's Anotsuka Geisa, and then there's Shira. Now, the first I want to talk about is Habaki. Now, Habaki is a government official whose main motivation is his loyalty to the shogunate. And then there's Anotsuka Geisa, whose own motivation is to create a fighting style that lasts for generations and to break down the old traditions that have kept so many samurai down. And then there's Shira, who is just the worst. He's like, I don't mean the worst in a bad way, I mean he's the villain of the series. He's a legit bad guy. There isn't anything clear about him. The guy is just pure evil. He's a psychopath, and he's a sadistic psychopath that takes pleasure in raping his victims, in torturing his victims, and in murdering his victims, especially young women. In short, Blade of the Immortal is just a great manga all around. It has very good main characters that are very nice to follow. It has badass characters, a very strong cast. It has great antagonists. It has great fights, the best fights I have seen in manga. It has some of the best art in manga. So yeah, Blade of the Immortal is just a great manga all around. It's why it's my second favorite manga, and sometimes wrestles with Berserk, which is considered the GOAT. So yeah, this is my review for Blade of the Immortal. It's a really great manga. Sometimes it's a little bit underrated because I don't hear a lot of people talking about it. There have been a few reviews on YouTube, and this will be one of them now. So yeah, Blade of the Immortal is a great manga. Go ahead and read it. It has great fights, great characters, great everything. The final arc is one of the best in terms of action spectacle. So yeah, read it, give it a try. Before I forget, I want to also kind of put out this disclaimer. Blade of the Immortal has a lot of violence, has a lot of blood and gore, has a lot of profanity, has a lot of nudity and a few disturbing moments such as rape and torture. So if you're not up for that, you might want to consider skipping this manga. Oh, and it has one of my favorite female characters of all time in manga and anime, and that is Maki Otono Tachibana. That is one character to look out for. She is a joy to behold. So anyway, this is Dear God Tinku Hoy with my review of the greatest manga you have never read, Blade of the Immortal by Hiroaki Samura. I hope you enjoyed my review, and wherever you are in the world, I hope you have a great day. I'll see you again some other time. Bye. Oh yeah, please do not watch any of the anime adaptations of Blade of the Immortal. They are both garbage. Read the manga instead. Bye again.